Welcome back to my garage. I'm Josh, and this is a door. A few weeks ago, I mentioned that the next thing the Mustang needs is some doors, and I've got 4 of them. I'd like to do my best to save the original doors that came with the car, but as you can tell, we've got rust holes, so they're going to need a lot of work, and that's what this week's going to be about. As you can see, this thing was pulled straight off the Mustang, and nothing but the interior panel has been removed, so let's go ahead and start by getting everything off this thing. This next day, my motivation is shot for some reason, but this thing's not going to finish itself. I've got a few hours before I have to be anywhere, so let's strip some paint. This is one of the motor mounts that came out of the Fastback. It is rusted and grimy and gross, and today we're going to do an experiment with it. This is about 4 gallons of water. I've got some washing soda, also known as sodium carbonate, not to be confused with sodium bicarbonate, that'll make your bread fluffy. I've got a stick with copper wire on it. I've got this cute little guy that I bought years ago, and well, it didn't work for what I bought it for, so we'll see if I get something out of it now. So in my water here, since I got about 4 gallons of water, I'm going to put about 4 tablespoons of the washing soda. I'm going to take a rebar, and I'm going to use that to kind of mix it all together. We'll leave the rebar in there. And we'll take our engine mount, hook it on the copper wire, and drop it in. Make sure we don't touch the rebar. You take your positive lead, connect it to the rebar, take your negative lead, connect it to the copper wire, and you go plug in your charger. So the electrolysis on the engine mount is done. I should have gotten a better before shot, but I didn't. But it is much better, much cleaner. I'll definitely throw this back in the Mustang. That battery charger that I was trying to use is a smart charger. Unfortunately, it could tell it wasn't hooked up to a battery and it would not work. So I had to come up with a creative solution. But you might be asking, what does this have to do with the doors? Let me show you. The inside of these doors have a significant amount of rust built up, and it's going to be hard to get to. And the bottom of these doors is rusted through in several places. We've got pinholes, we got rust holes, and I could go through and scrub that, but I figure let's use electrolysis to clean this up. The next logical question is, how are you going to fit an entire door in a bucket? Well, I'm not. This is my electrolysis tank. I used OSB and scrap 2x4 to build about a 4.5 by 3.5 box. What I'm going to do is line it with heavy-duty drop cloth and fill it with water. Alright, moment of truth here. So I bound myself up some rebar I'm going to throw in there. I got a little wire tail here that I can clip my electrode to. Now remember, 4 out of 5 doctors don't recommend combining electricity and water. Positive to the sacrificial metal, negative to the item. And as we watch, we can see the water is starting to move. That's electricity running through the soda. Here in a little bit, it'll start taking the rust off, and we'll have a nice clean panel in the end. I got the first door out of the electrolysis tank, and it did a pretty good job. It's not perfect. Anytime you do this sort of stuff, you're gonna have to put some elbow grease in at the end anyways. It's just a lot less effort than if you didn't do it at all. I've got myself my drill, my angle grinder, a couple different wire brushes. I'm gonna go ahead and go over this, polish it down, and see if I can't get off the rest of the rust. We got the second door on the workhorses. We're gonna do the same thing to this. Take the wire brushes, completely scrub it down, get as much of this off. I'm not so worried about getting all the paint off on the inside here. I'm going to obviously paint over it, but in the end, this is gonna be covered with the door panel, so I'm not too concerned about that. I'm more concerned about the parts that are gonna show and the parts on the inside that need to be cleaned up before we put more rust protection on. Here's the first door. Come through, we got a little bit of pinholes there. Still got this hole to clean up. Most of that rust is gone. And most of that rust is gone. You can see a little bit still there, right there. So probably what I'm going to do is come back with the rust converter primer and do the best I can to cover the entire inside with that primer. Make sure there's no rust in there. And then we can come back and work on fixing these holes. See what we can do there. And here's the bottom of the second door. As you can see, all that has been eaten away. I went ahead and put some rust converter on there because that was all pretty deep. That's why it's all looking black now. So I'm curious of your opinion. If you had this door, would you work on saving it, or would you spend the $300 just to get a new one? Leave a comment. So the electrolysis tank isn't the end-all be-all for removing rust. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. This was kind of my first time playing around with it, and I was trying to do it with things I had lying around the shop. Initially I said I used this little battery charger to get it going. Unfortunately, that's a smart charger, and it can tell if you're hooked up to a battery or not. So 9 times out of 10, that's a good thing. This time, it bit me in the butt. After that, I tried taking just a regular plug, and I cut the end off of it, and I tried using that, and it didn't work. Long story short, I ended up having to go get a laptop battery charger, and I hooked that up, and that worked. In the end, the best thing I've seen on the interweb, get a battery, hook your smart charger up to the battery, and then run it in parallel with your cables going to your electrolysis tank. I'm not a professional shop, so I don't have a time limit to get this Mustang built and out, so I can take my time to try playing with electrolysis. There will be other things that I try playing with along the way. If you're just doing this as a hobby, I say don't get in too much of a hurry. If you find a technique or something that you want to try, you want to play with it, by all means do so. But understand, when you do that sort of thing, you do it at your own risk. Expect to make mistakes. There are very few things that you can screw up that cannot be fixed somehow. Take these doors for example. If I ended up hooking up the leads backwards and all the rust went onto the door and I ended up eating a hole through the door, in the end I could just go buy a new door. The moral is, take time to play with it. This stuff can be fun, and if you get into too much of a hurry to get to your end goal, you can end up missing out on a lot of enjoyable things. Meet Ted. Ted is my solution to the birds coming into my garage and pooping on my car. Hopefully Ted does his job.